Welcome to The Herbal Ire, your podcast on all things holistic health, medical astrology, spirituality, herbalism, and so much more. Presented by your host, Ire Atla, medical astrologist, herbalist, and naturopath. Let's dive right into today's topic, love and light. Hello everybody, welcome back to The Herbal Ire. I'm your host, Ire Atla, and I just wanted to do a 2022 recap today for everybody. I'm going to give some trigger warnings now, so if this is something that you can't handle, definitely please don't listen, but there will be some suicide talk and some talk of mental health care in the United States and all of that fun stuff that goes with all of that. So if that's something that's too triggering for you, I recommend that you either skip this episode or skip over kind of like the middle of the episode where I talk about that. So let's get started. Hi, dear listeners. Welcome back. I am so excited to be going over the 2022 year-end recap with you guys today. So we're kind of going to go, I think, like month by month and just kind of recap what happened. So January, we moved on January 1st during a blizzard to a property on the border of New Mexico and Colorado. So we had gone in September, October of the previous year, so 2021, with some family, and we were going to split the 40 acres, divided up between us, and all kind of live together on this land and have like a little farm going and some family land that we could pass on to our kids and just, enjoy spending some time with some family that we love and just haven't got to spend a lot of time with in the past, few years due to COVID and just life in general and us living further away. So this was like the perfect opportunity to, get to spend more time with them. So January 1st comes, we go to move on to the property. We're the first ones to move. A blizzard comes up and we drive through a fucking blizzard towing our RV in one vehicle. My husband's up there towing and I'm behind him in our other car with two dogs, one of our kids, and two random chickens that we had just picked up on the way up there. So it was kind of a disaster. We were slipping and sliding everywhere. The roads were not great, and it was very treacherous and very tedious. And by the time we got to the property, we were utterly exhausted. So we had spent months prior to this clearing a section of land of all the cactus and the big rocks and everything out of the way, so we had a spot to park the RV. We had leveled it out. We did like all this work. And so we get there, my husband gets into the driveway and he turns to tow it up the hill to this spot we had cleared, and he goes to the point where the truck is up there and half of the RV is up there, meaning like one set of wheels is up in there. The other half is still kind of on the driveway. And that's as far as he makes it. And the truck sinks up to its axles. And it is not going anywhere. The RV has now made all the wheels are up there on like this section of the property. But they're literally not going anywhere. It's freezing cold by this point. The sun is going down. The wind is picked up. It's like bitter cold. And we just are like, you know what? Fuck it. We're just going to stay right here for the night. So we get everybody out of the car. My husband knocks all of the tons of ice off of the stairs so we can get them out. We go and we stay the night in the RV with all the chickens and everything too, because we didn't want to leave them outside. So we had 2 chickens in the house, 2 dogs, a kid, us, like it was crazy. So we spend the night. The next morning we get up and we're trying to assess the situation now that it's not dark and try to figure out if we can actually get up there. And let's just say that it was not going to happen. So we ended up having to call for a tow truck to come and dig the truck out of the holes that it had gotten itself into. So we had to disconnect the RV, and it's on this very sandy soil. And so we are trying to stabilize the front jack so that it will, not just sink and then the RV just tips forward into the dirt. And it's like really hard. My husband's like freaking out that the RV's like gonna tip over or slide to the front, something. So we finally get enough, like, we had some pieces of wood and some cardboard and a bunch of stuff under it to make it more stable so that it wasn't doing that. And the guy finally has to end up leaving and go get a bigger truck to get my husband's truck out, because we had a Dodge Ram 3500 diesel, and this thing is a beast, right? So he finally gets the truck out, and then he can't get the RV out. He's like, no, that's outside of my wheelhouse. We end up having to rent a backhoe that they deliver like on Thursday. So we got up there like on a Sunday, Monday. They can't get the backhoe to us till Thursday. So the backhoe comes on Thursday. We have to end up hooking it up with chains and all this stuff to the front of the RV, to the hitch, and drag it across the property to set it up, where we ended up changing our minds about our original spot and moving it to the secondary location. And it was rough. We thought the whole time that RV was going to smash into the backhoe. You had to keep like steady pressure and pulling because it was on chains and straps and not like actually how it normally is on the ball of a hitch, right? And so it was like tipping forward. So if he slowed down too much, the RV just kept coming. And so very nerve-wracking. We finally get it over there. So needless to say, January started off with a bang. And it kind of just set the tone for the whole year. The whole year, to be honest, was probably one of the worst years that I have had in a very long time. And same with my family. So we get through January, we get set up, it's freezing cold, we get some structures built for the animals, we do all that, right? And February comes, and honestly, I don't think much changed in February. I don't remember much about February, just setting up some more structures and stuff like that. March, again, pretty uneventful. Spring was coming, though, so that was nice. But out here where we have our property, when spring comes and the snow starts melting off of the mountains and definitely melting off of the land, where now it's cooler on the top of the mountains that surround us and warmer in the valley, you'll get these gusts of wind that are absolutely phenomenally like destructive. And we were not prepared for that at all. Again, still living in the RV because we were talking about building a structure to live in, or just living in the RV indefinitely. So we're still living in that. We had put with foam insulation boards, like a skirt around it to help in the winter, keep us warm. And we had actually done really great. We were fine. And then these spring winds came and they ripped the shit out of that skirt. They tore down structures we had built. They flung things around that we didn't think were flingable. I mean, it was awful. So we spent basically all of March really just learning how to like batten down everything so that they wouldn't just blow away and disappear, right? So that was very stressful because we just didn't expect that, didn't know this was going to happen. And every morning you got up and it was just like, now we got to go do this and now we got to go fix that. And, like it was just very tiring to always be going back and fixing shit that you would just fix the day before. So all of March, we basically just were in like fix everything multiple times a week mode. During that time, we did have a blizzard that came through as well. Another one that was worse than the one we came in January. It was -15 with the wind chill factor. We went to go check on the chickens because I, of course, am like super worried that they're out there freezing to death in their coop because the -15 winds. Going outside in -15-degree weather with the winds whipping like it, I do not recommend. I had on all of the winter gear that we had, which had been fine all winter long. And that wind was biting through that stuff like you have never seen. I lost feeling to my fingers within like a minute of being outside. My toes started going next. Pretty soon I could hardly feel my calves. And I had, at this point, made it from the RV to about halfway to the chicken coop. And the chicken coop was literally only like 250 feet from the house. I'm like, I don't know if these chickens are worth this at this point. But we got there, we checked on them. They were absolutely fine. There is no need to worry about your chickens, in case anybody's wondering. They do really great in cold weather. In fact, they do better in cold weather than they do in hot weather. We are more likely to lose a chicken in the summer than we are in the winter. So got them taken care of. They were fine. They thought we were crazy for being out there. You could hear them. We opened the door. They were like, blah, 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 really pissed off that we were even like checking on them. So needless to say, we did not go back outside to check on them. We left them alone. I was like, they're fine. So that was, again, an interesting experience to figure out, like, how to, survive that. We'd never done, and I've never been in that kind of, like, stormy winter weather. I grew up in, like, Chicago, Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, that kind of area where we got a lot of snow, but nothing, like, with that biting winds that were so strong. So, again, learn some new stuff about ourselves and how to survive in some crazy weather. So that was March, and then April comes, and April is kind of where the year just went to shit. April 1st, I had started a new job at a little hospital that wasn't too far from where we were living, just to pick up some extra hours and just have some extra funds coming in. It wasn't too far away, and I was like, oh, this will be nice, kind of get to know the local community, integrate ourselves, all that fun stuff, right? So I'd only been there like a week, I think it was, and I was still finishing up some orientation stuff. April 1st, it was a Friday. I was supposed to do some orientation stuff at like this building that was not connected to the hospital, and then afterwards I was supposed to go and do orientation on the floor. And I get done with the orientation in the separate building, and my phone had been on silent because we were doing testing and stuff, and so I didn't want it disturbing anybody. I get my stuff all gathered up, I pick up my phone and I look at it, and I have like a ton of missed calls and a fuck ton of text messages, and I open them up, and they are from my husband's phone, and the first thing that I see is a message saying, "Hi, your husband was in a pretty bad car accident. He's on the way to the hospital. Can you meet him there?" And I was like, what the fuck? Because my husband is like a grandpa driver. This dude drives so slow, so carefully. And I was like, if he was in an accident, like, I don't even, are they sure this is my husband? Did they get the, like, what's going on? So I immediately panic. I don't even clock out. I just leave. I get in my car and I start driving because he was going to a second hospital that was in a different town than the one I was at. Sister hospitals, but different towns. So on the road, I call my boss and I'm like, look, my husband's just in a bad accident. I don't know what's going on, but I got this message. I have got to get to, insert name of hospital here. And I'm like, I think I forgot to clock out. If you could clock me out. I said, I won't be back. I'll let you know what's going on as soon as I find out. So I fly to this hospital and I get there and he is surrounded by people. He has a neck brace on. It just blood, just blood. And he looks awful. They won't let me get any closer than where I am, which was several feet away still, so I can't see him clearly. But I see all of the stuff that you do for trauma, right? They have one guy with the ultrasound and one guy with the IVs and one guy over here with this, and it's just the whole thing. I've worked in trauma hospitals, and there's like a whole thing. It's very similar to like what you see on the movies when traumas come in, right? And they won't let me any closer. The nurse is like, oh, I'm sure he's fine. And I'm looking at her. She's like, well, he was telling jokes. And I look at her and I said, my husband will tell you a joke and then and joke about everything, act like he's fine. I said, while he's like bleeding out internally, and then he'll just crash on you. I said, because he's not one to tell you that something is wrong. I'm like, so trust me, I know my husband, and just because he's joking doesn't mean that he's fine, right? This does not mean that he is okay, that there's nothing terrible happening to him. So I finally get in there to see him. They finish the fast scan, which is what the ultrasound was. They're checking for all the internal organs for bleeding, things like that. And I finally get in there to see him, and he looks awful. I mean, just like super pale, and he has cuts everywhere from the glass. He has there's glass in his beard. There's glass everywhere that I can see. I picked a piece out of his ear. Like, he just looks horrible. Cuts everywhere. He looks very disoriented. And I'm talking to the doctor. I'm like, did you see anything on the fast scan? What's going on? What happened? And apparently his truck had rolled like 3 times, the witnesses said. And this is our big, giant Dodge Ram 3500 diesel. And the police end up showing up, the state troopers, I think it was, the sheriff, I don't even remember, but they came by. They had been at the accident scene, they'd been on site, and they were describing what happened, and they said, honestly, the only reason that he was not more injured was because he was in this giant ass full-size pickup truck. But the back seat where our daughter usually would be sitting, our youngest would be sitting, the door was like smashed in. And if she had been there, if she had not stayed behind with the family at the property, we don't know if she would even be here today. Like, that door was smashed in, and her seat, she was still in a high-backed booster because she's just this tiny little petite thing, and she still needed that. The top of it, where like the headrest was just crushed. And so thank the gods she was not in there. Thank the gods my husband was not more injured than he was. He didn't have any internal bleeding, but he was really cut up, really banged up. He had a few sprains and nasty shit going on, and he had severe whiplash, so he had to wear the seat collar for a while. Like, it was, and then of course there comes the whole like PTSD thing from, being in an accident. So still struggling with that, but it's definitely improving. So that was April 1st. And it was just, it was just awful. It was one of the worst things I have ever gone through in, like, getting a message like that. It was just, I can't even describe it. I was absolutely, like, terrified when I got that message. My husband is 100% my soulmate. We were definitely meant to find each other this time around the sun. We are meant to be, and this guy is just like my best friend, my lover. He's a fantastic father. He loves our kids so much. He is just a great, just a great provider and husband, and he's very protective, and he makes us feel super safe, which after leaving the abusive marriage that I had been in and kind of starting my life all over again as a single parent for a long time, really, I needed that safety and security feeling in a relationship, and he brings that, like, I can't even tell you. And so this was just like devastating to think that something might be super wrong with him, or that he might actually, die. And so that was traumatizing to him, obviously, because he was in it, traumatizing to me because I was super worried, and, that no one would tell me anything. And it was just the whole thing, very traumatic. Don't ever want to do that again. So that was the very first day of April. And then the very next week, on the next Friday, I was at that new job, and it had been kind of miserable, but I was trying to just push through it. I got back to work on that Monday after he'd been in his accident. I'd been caring for him all weekend. He was still not 100%, couldn't really do much, was still very, like, sore and weak and just laying in bed. But I went into work anyway because I was scheduled to work, and I'm brand new. I didn't want to call out, so I was like, okay. So I get there. Not a single person, including my boss, who knew what had happened, because I had messaged her to let her know how he was and what was going on, asked me how he was doing. I was like super not 100% present that day because I was worried about him, being home by himself with the kids for the first time since the accident. And so I was worried about him, and I was trying to, my mind was there and not 100% at the hospital, right? And the one girl finally was like, you're just, like, not here today. What's going on with you? Like, super rude. And I was like, my husband was just in a terrible accident and probably could have died on Friday. I was like, so I'm just not 100% here because he's at home by himself and he's still not healed and he's miserable. And I'm just like, my mind is there because I'm worried about him. And she was like, just rolls her eyes and walks away. And I was like, okay. And you're a nurse. Great. Wonderful compassion there. And so it basically just got worse that whole week. I ended up hearing them, like, talking about me right behind a wall that I was sitting by. Like, it's not a thick wall, it's a thin wall. You can hear them talking. The boss was joining in, and I was just like, you know what? I have been doing nursing for a really hell of a long time, and I have never worked at a place where people are this nasty, that they're talking about you directly behind your back, where they're making you like feel like shit all the time, where when you show up after something bad has happened in your life, they don't even ask you how you're doing. Like, no compassion, super nasty. They actually told me I was being too nice to the patients, and I was just like, you know what, fuck this. So Friday comes, it got a lot worse. I won't go into any more detail than that, but it was just awful. I left after I finished my shift. I got to the car, I called my husband, and I was just sobbing. And I was like, I can't stand working here. This is really upsetting me. And just knowing like my chart, my astrology chart, and knowing my human design, like I really pick up on energies super well, and I can't work in a place where the energy is like really off or is like really negative, because it really affects me, and then my mental health goes in the toilet. And my mental health is super important to me, especially working in nursing for the last 2 years during COVID. Let me just tell you, mental health is like, it was on like the edge for a very long time, where I could teeter either way into, severe mental illness or being semi okay. It was really terrible, and I didn't want to get there again. And that's where this place was leading me, right? So I call him up, and I get home finally, because it was a decent drive. I get home, and he's like, look, I never do this. I'm not that kind of husband. I don't think you're my property, and I don't want to tell you what to do ever. He's like, but I'm putting my foot down this time, and you're not going back to that place, because you've been crying like this pretty much every shift that you end there. And he's like, I have never seen you do that unless you've lost a patient. He's like, and you're not losing patients. You're just dealing with shitty workers. He's like, so no, you're not going back. So I ended up just writing a 1-sentence letter that basically was like, I'm done. And I drove back on Sunday. I got my stuff out of my locker and dropped my badge and that note into the box. And that was it. I never heard a single thing from them. They did not even attempt to try to get me to come back or call me or anything. So I think they kind of really got the message that, if you're going to treat people like this, they're not going to stay. And they had told me when I first started there, we have a hard time keeping nurses. Well, no shit. If you treat new employees to your place who do have a lot of nursing experience like they're a bunch of idiots, and you talk down to them and you're nasty to them, people who have been nurses for as long as I've been nurses aren't going to stick around for that. A new nurse might, because they don't know any better and they don't know that this is not how it should be, and so they may stay and just be miserable. I've been a nurse for 17 years. I've been in healthcare for 20. I am not in any way, shape, or form going to stay around in a place that doesn't make me feel good and that I'm literally crying after every shift. No thank you. So I left. And and then the week after that, literally our whole life imploded. The family that we had been staying with on that property, that we were, we thought everything was fine. I don't know if they had a mental health crisis or what. It kind of seems like it, but they kind of went way off the deep end and started yelling, accusing us of things that weren't true. Like, it was very paranoid, which is why I'm kind of leaning toward they probably were having a mental health crisis and a mental health breakdown. And then ended with basically threatening to shoot our kids or anybody else that was walking around on the property where they didn't think they should be. And we looked at each other and we were like, we can't be here anymore, because I don't know if they're serious or not, but let's just say that they are for sake of argument. We can't stay here with our kids and stuff. I mean, with a dangerous person like that threatening this kind of stuff, who seems like they either are having a mental health crisis or on the verge of having one. And that can lead to some dangerous things sometimes until they get treatment. And this person wasn't even acknowledging that they needed any kind of help at all. So we decided to leave. So we ended up, of course, we don't have a truck yet because the truck had just been in an accident. So we have no way of moving our RV or any of our stuff or any of our animals, nothing. So we finally got the insurance money from the truck at the end, like mid-May, somewhere in there. Took forever. Finally get that, and we ended up finding a used truck, great specs, 3500 dually, which we were like, great, even better, but it's gasser this time. So perfect. We get the RV moved, we get 90% of our animals moved, and the damn truck stops working, and it went into the shop. By this point, it was like end of June, beginning of July. We were moving slowly. We had found another property. We'd put down all of our savings. Basically, we cleared out to put down a down payment so that we could move and feel safe. And so we had like no money to really get the truck fixed, but it went to the shop. It's still in the shop. Here it is, December of 2022, and it's still in the shop because they can't figure out what's wrong with it. It's doing some really weird shit, and every time they fix it, they believe, and they get it going, it goes fine for like 15-20 minutes, and then it goes back to doing what it was doing. So they're in a conundrum, we're in a conundrum, we're still trying to figure it out. So that's gone, so we don't have that. And like, that was just, yeah. So that was like May. We find this property, we start moving. Some other stuff happened in May that I won't get into because it's very personal and it's really not my story to tell. But some shit went down with one of our kids that just was super upsetting to my husband. And he wound up in a really bad mental health state, which led to him being very suicidal, which led to us having to deal with that and finding ways around that and getting treatment. And in case you haven't tried to get mental health care in this country, the US, then let me just tell you that it is ridiculous. It is absolutely terrible. Even if you are in an absolute mental health crisis when you walk into the ED, they don't care. They will maybe, if you're lucky, you will get to talk to somebody and they will throw some pills at you on the way out the door and send you back out. They don't, unless you've actually attempted suicide and need actual medical treatment from that, like because, you're bleeding out or you are, overdosed on something, whatever route that, that happened by. That is the only, and then you'll get medical treatment for that, but there won't be hardly any treatment, if any at all, for the actual cause, which was whatever the root cause is that caused someone to be suicidal to begin with. And it's awful. So we've been navigating that. So anyway, basically from April until November, I took off from my business. I didn't really do much with it at all. I kind of just took a leave of absence, stepped back. I was helping with first my husband's physical health after the accident, and then his mental health from the PTSD, and then the mental health from the other shit that happened, and just really working on trying to get him better. So most of the summer is a blur of doctors and trying new things and therapy and whatever else that we could find to try to help him with this. That was basically cobbling shit together because the mental health care in this country is abominable. And so that whole summer was just miserable. So September comes and we are really kind of struggling by this point because I haven't been working much. My business is on hold. I was picking up some as needed shifts at another hospital, but it was several hours away, so I wasn't able to pick up super often. So we were struggling financially. We had our one car go down and was unusable for that moment, and so we ended up using the extra money that we still had from the insurance in the truck to purchase another vehicle, old as fuck vehicle, but it worked and it worked great, and it made it so that I could go to work more often because I could stay in the back of this vehicle and kind of like stealth camp down there in that area. So I was able to pick up some more shifts, and then that vehicle broke down on the way back one day and I got stranded down there and wound up at a shop where I had to spend the night because they didn't have the part that they needed and it was coming in the morning. And we didn't have the money for it because at that point all of our savings had gone into purchasing this new piece of property so that we could feel safe, and then moving everybody and my husband's mental health and all the hospital bills that we had to pay. So like we legit were running on fumes, and I had kind of shut down my business for a little bit because again he needed me and I couldn't focus on both and give either one the attention that it really needed. So that kind of just went to the wayside. So we were struggling, and this is hard for me to admit because it's not something I like to do, but we reached out for help to a bunch of friends and family, and that love and outpouring of support and help that we got was just absolutely mind-blowing, and it really kind of, increased our faith in some of humanity, because we've been struggling for so long. And honestly, people didn't know because I didn't say anything. You're just, when you're in it, you don't even know that you're not really telling people anything about it, because you're just so busy dealing with it that you just don't have the bandwidth to have to go explain to somebody else, like, what is going on. Like, you just really want them to notice that you're struggling and just be like, hey, I've seen that you're struggling. How can we help? What do you need? And of course, people don't always notice that, because, we're all caught up in our own shit, and they don't always notice that you are struggling, especially if you're like me and you keep it really well hidden. So we ended up having a ton of support that way. We were able to get the vehicle fixed. I was able to get back up, to our property and all that stuff. And it's actually been fine since. It's been great since. So the vehicle has been. Anyway, then so by this point, it's like September, October time. And that is, a lot of stuff going on there. We didn't really do much. We celebrated Samhain, but not like we usually do. By this point, my husband's depression was off the charts. Mine was probably not doing much better, my mental health, just because I'd been dealing with his for so long, and then I've been traveling down to this hospital trying to work as many days as I can so that, we have money for food on the table and for feeding the animals and doing all that stuff. And so birthdays come in October, November, for us, as well as Samhain and Thanksgiving. And we did not do much for any of those holidays like we usually do. We didn't really feel like celebrating. It was just really, really rough. Come November, he was doing a little bit better, and I felt like I could kind of step back from having to be really up in all of his business and could kind of restart my business. So I got that kind of re-going again, and introduced my group program, which is actually going super fucking great, and I love it, and I'm so glad that I decided to do it when I did it. I have the most amazing people in there, and we are rocking it out, and everybody is like just already in the first few weeks of doing this feeling better and seeing improvements in their health, and it's been so great, so rewarding, and that has really helped with a lot of like my mental health and stuff, to see that, I'm actually making a difference and people are feeling better, and I'm able to do that. I've gotten a lot of medical astrology readings and clients and stuff that I've been doing that way too, so that's been lovely. Podcast is doing really good, and I love doing this. This is actually probably one of my favorite things to do out of everything in my business, and just in life in general. I love my podcast and I love doing this. So that really, when I started that, I think I started that back in like August, September, I just really wanted to like get stuff out and talk and not have it be to necessarily people who really knew me. And so that really, really helped. And apparently, according to Spotify, I like to talk, because between the time I started it till the beginning of December, I had put out 450 hours of podcasts. And I was like, holy hell, that is way more than I thought. So apparently it was a good outlet. I absolutely love it. I've had a great response to it, and it's been one of the highlights of the year that's really just made things better for me personally and just in general. So we started that, and my birthday was in November, so his is October, so we celebrated all of those as much as we could, and then December came. And we are realizing that prior to us moving here to on the border of Colorado, New Mexico, and living here, we had been traveling full-time nomadic life like for 3 years as a family. Absolutely loved it. And then, kind of decided that maybe it was time to, like settle down and only travel part-time, right? And the plan was, with the family land, was that we would be able to travel still, and they would watch our animals and our house and all that, and then they left, we would watch their stuff. And so we would be able to do that. Well, when that all kind of imploded and we had to move and pivot, we didn't have that anymore, because we don't know anybody out here, really, We finally have made a couple of friends, but prior to that, we didn't know anybody, so we were kind of just like out here, so we couldn't travel. And I think a lot of that not being able to travel really contributed to a lot of like the mental health issues and things that we were having, because we just really discovered that we are just really nomadic at heart, and that we love traveling. We love waking up in a different place all the time. I love being on the road. I love running my business from the road. I've been doing this group program from the road for the last 3-4 weeks, and it's been great, and it's been fabulous and super well received. Like, nobody cares that I'm on the road while doing this, because they're still getting the same great level of service they would get if I was here. In fact, I actually think it's better, because when I'm here, I'm like really depressed and I just don't have the bandwidth to do too much. And so it's actually been better on the road, because I've been able to actually put more time and effort into it, energy, and I just have more energy, and I'm like my aura is better. Like, just everything is just better. So we ended up we just took a road trip. Actually, we got on the road beginning like December 13th, somewhere in there, and we drove from where we are in like New Mexico to Florida first, and saw some friends and did some stuff there. We're still we have never actually changed our address, because we don't have an address here yet. We have to like go through 7,000 steps to get an address. So we're still Florida residents. So we went back there to fulfill our residency requirements for the year. We only had a few more days that we had to be there. You had to be there 30 days a year. So we had to go back and finish out our few more days, saw some friends. Then we drove up to Virginia. So actually, we stopped in Georgia on the way and saw 2 more sets of friends. Then we drove up to Virginia and dropped my youngest daughter off at her dad's house for the holidays. And then we drove to a different section of Virginia and hung out with some friends of ours for a couple of days, who are doing the homesteading thing, and they're loving it, and that's totally them, so it works out great for them. We got to see their new land and everything, so that was awesome. And then we traveled from there to Tennessee and saw our older kids, and got to spend Christmas holiday with them and their significant others, and they also have like a little homestead that they live off of. So we got to see that and all of their animals. And then we traveled from Tennessee to Colorado to pick up our youngest from the airport that her dad flew her back to. And then we drove from there back to our house. So we just got back on Thursday, the 29th of December, super late at night. We had a friend watching our animals. And when we got back, we just looked at each other the next morning, and I said, I want to be back on the road again. And my husband said the same thing, and we talked to our youngest daughter, because she'd be the one who travels the most with us. And we talked to her and we said, how do you feel? And she's like, this has been fun, and I didn't realize how much I missed it. And so we had a good long family discussion and decided that we just really aren't meant to be here. With all this shit that happened this year, there was so many signs that the universe was like, you are not supposed to be doing this. You are not supposed to be here. You need to, do what your hearts really want to do. And what your hearts really want to do is be nomadic and move about and travel. And so that being said, I contacted my recruiter from when I was doing travel nursing and signed a contract in literally an hour. I submitted to a site. They called me 5 minutes after I submitted, did the phone interview, submitted an offer within 30 minutes of us getting off the phone to my agency. And within an hour after that, my agency had the contract to me and I signed it, and we are good to go. So we have made a deal with one of our friends to sell all of our animals off to her. And so we will be transferring them over to her here by the end of January, because my contract starts in January. So we'll be transferring them over to her, and we're going to get back on the road this time. Instead of taking the RV, we will be traveling in a van to start with, and then we'll see if we want to continue in that or try something different. But we're doing that. We lost our one dog in September. She was 17 and just not doing well. Her health was really declining, and sadly we had to put her down, and that was seriously one of the worst things that I have ever done in my life. I had that dog since she was 9 weeks old. I rescued her at 9 weeks old. Her parents had been rescued, and mom ended up being pregnant, and they didn't know it. When they went to go get her fixed, they were like, we can't fix this dog, she has puppies inside of her. And so she ended up being born at these people's house that had rescued her parents. And so the rescue ended up distributing the puppies, and so we got her, and she's been my awesome companion since then. She went through hell with me in my abusive relationship and back again. And so having to do what I always told her I would do, which was, when it came time, enter suffering. I know it was the right thing to do, but man, was that fucking hard. God, that was hard. And that just was like the cap on the whole fucking shitty summer. Was the cherry on top was here, and now your dog is gone. And I'm telling you, when I tell you this year was rough, I mean this year was rough. That just sucked. So we will be on the road with our other dog and the kids and us, and we will be traveling around, and we are gonna do that again, and we're gonna see where that takes us. And I'm telling you, this has definitely been the right decision, because since we made this decision that we're gonna do this, literally everything has just bam, 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 fallen into place. Doors have opened that we weren't expecting. I have legitimately never signed a contract that fast in my fucking life. I can't tell you how many times I have had to submit and then wait a week or two before anybody from any of the places I've submitted to has even called me. Much less than taken only an hour or less to get an offer in. They'll tell you, oh, we're going to put in an offer. And then a week later, we finally get it. And then a week after that, it's okay, I've signed the contract. And it's it's so slow. This is the fastest that has ever happened. And that right there tells me this is the right thing, because it just is. If we weren't meant to do it, it would not have been that easy, and it wouldn't have come that fast. And since then, so many things are just falling into place. So 2022 was not a super great year. We dealt with a lot of health issues, mental, physical, emotional, even spiritual. Dealt with a lot of that. Dealt with death in our life. And I know death is a part of life, but it does not make it any easier when you go through it. We dealt with having to suddenly pivot and get our family safe and deal with a family member's mental health crisis that they're still refusing to get help for. And that's been so hard to watch them struggle and know that they need help and them just refuse it. And as someone who really, my whole life is helping other people get better, right? Through my business, through nursing, through all this stuff, it's just been hard watching that. So, yeah, it was rough, but 2023 is going to be better. We're going to rock it out. We're already starting on a good note before it even starts with knowing that we're moving in the right direction finally, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, what we're meant to be doing. We will always have this property here because it's 90% paid off now. So once we finish paying that off, we'll still have this here as an outpost place to come. We know our animals are going to be in very good hands, and we're going to get going. And the absolute goal that we are headed towards is no more nursing at all by the end of 2023. I'm going to be business only, just focusing on my medical astrology and my group program, my wellness program, and just truly being able to help people instead of just throw pills at them like I do at the hospital anymore. And just to be able to really live our life how we want, which is a nomadic lifestyle, on the road, traveling wherever we want to go, following the seasons and the weather, and caravanning with friends, and getting to see our family and our friends so much more often than we ever would otherwise. And it's going to be a rockin' year. It's going to be. I'm putting that out there in the universe because that's what I am totally headed towards this year, and what we are going to get back is going to be a fucking amazing year, and it's going to be one of the best years yet. So I hope you all had a better 2022, and if you didn't, I understand completely that it's just rough year, but 2023 is going to get better for us. We're going to rock it out. So, Happy New Year. I hope you all have a great celebration tonight if that's what you choose to do, and that you get to spend time with your loved ones that you wish to, and that 2023 is everything that you want it to be and more. I'll talk to you guys next time. Love and light. So, how cool is medical astrology? If you have finished listening to this medical astrology mini-series and are like, fuck yes, how do I get a reading? Well, you are going to love this. Just for my amazing podcast listeners, I am offering 20% off my medical astrology natal chart readings. These readings are an in-depth, detailed assessment of your natal chart from a medical astrology standpoint. This assessment will show you where your health issues may occur, what this means for you and your health, ways to work on prevention, herbs, supplements, diet, lifestyle, and mindset transformations necessary for prevention and management of current health issues. And so, yeah, if you're like, this is great, but I really want more, or I need more of an action plan, you also get a discount for working together if you want to take it further and get a customized program based on your natal chart and your specific needs. So, to redeem your discount, you're going to go to the link in the show notes and you're going to enter code MA20 at checkout. Again, you're going to enter coupon code MA20 at checkout to receive 20% off your medical astrology natal chart reading. And as I mentioned, you can find the link in the show notes. Hope to see you there. That's it for another great episode of The Herbal Ayar. Tune in next week for more valuable content with your host, Ayar Atla.